Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Zach here at secretsoflongevity.com, and this is another video response to Brandon Cintron's videos that he put out after I recorded my last one. So it wasn't even uploaded yet, and I was already getting him making multiple videos in response to sort of going on about the same topic. And then of course he made one as a response to my video as well. And that's great. I've just got more material to work with. You're probably wondering, WTF, why did I wait so long to make another video response? It's been about 4 days. I've just been really busy and haven't gotten around to making the video, but I've had more time to sort of put things together, and so this one should be very thorough. Might be a little longer. So the first thing I wanted to do is clarify some things, and specifically when I was talking about a need to go back to meat, there was a few things that I was referring to, and you were commenting on those about the iron and vitamin A, being able to get ample amounts of that from plant foods. So those aren't legitimate reasons in your view. So first of all, iron, there's two different types of iron. There's heme iron, which is the iron that is in the form that it is inside our blood, inside the blood of animals, and that's the most absorbable. You consume heme iron and it gets absorbed into your bloodstream no matter what, and it happens very rapidly. There's also non-heme iron, which is iron in plants, which our body can use and turn into iron for blood, etc. And one benefit to this is that if your body has plenty of iron, you're not going to absorb non-heme iron. Your body actually recognizes it and doesn't uptake it and just lets it pass through you. However, if you are low iron, it's very slow to absorb and is much more difficult for the body to take up as quickly. And there is some theories out there that whether it's blood type or specific genetics or specific metabolism types need different types of iron, so that certain people might need heme iron more and they're just not able to absorb fully the non-heme iron. And I always thought I was getting enough iron, and I mean, I'd been vegetarian for 10 years, been vegan for a year, but I did hit rock bottom when I was weightlifting, interestingly enough. So the higher load on my body, exercise load, increased my needs for iron. And I was eating tons of green juice, or drinking tons of green juice, eating salads, taking chlorella and spirulina, algae, very loaded with iron, all those things, vegetables, broccoli, etc. But I just wasn't absorbing it. And I was even taking hushu, which has, again, that iron that's plant-based, and the heme iron, which I then added in the forms of red meat, really boosted my levels back up there. I did get this checked with a blood test, and that was something that was giving me a lot of problems. It was very low, and I was very low energy. And to clarify the issue of vitamin A, yes, it's true, we only find vitamin A in animal foods. The vitamin A in plants is a carotenoid. It is a provitamin or precursor to vitamin A, and I showed in the video how that was easily shown to be some people having lowered ability to convert that. So that was in my last one, which you can check the references for. In some places it looks like it's about 45% of people are only able to convert vitamin A with enough regularity to meet the body's needs. It actually varies between men and women too. So if you happen to be someone who can't convert the vitamin A or the carotenoids to vitamin A, then you're going to be screwed if you think you're just going to get it all from plants. So as I said, I was a vegetarian for 10 years with a brief period in there experimenting with a very high protein diet from meat, which didn't work at the time. I was doing it completely wrong. I'm not going to get into that, but I was vegetarian basically for 10 years. Then I went on to a vegan diet for a bit leading up to becoming more raw, and then I became fully raw when I went to the Hippocrates Health Institute, and I was a raw vegan for almost a year after that. So total I was a raw foodist 80% or more for a year. And then I added some eggs back into my diet, and then at a certain point in the last fall I added raw dairy into my diet. Even before that I was adding a little bit of raw cheese, and so the raw dairy was in my diet throughout the winter. It did me a lot of good, but dairy doesn't have iron, or barely any if it does have any, so that wasn't a source for the heme iron. And it was in the spring when I really hit that rock bottom place, and felt great when I started to add some meat back in. So a major problem that I ran into on a vegan / mostly plant-based diet was teeth problems. wearing away of tooth enamel. My teeth are a little bit clear at the tips even still. And then they were also getting stains on them very easily, which is indicative of enamel eroding away and the stains getting stuck on your teeth because there's not that protective enamel, so it sticks to the teeth a lot easier. And since adding meats and dairy and eggs, that really stopped the progression of this enamel erosion, but it wasn't really rebuilding it. And literally only a week and a bit ago I bought some fermented cod liver oil, and I've been taking that, and without any addition of rough stuff on to use to brush my teeth with like baking soda or other things, the stains have been coming off with regular brushing when I just use Dr. Bronner's soap at the moment, and that takes the stains right off, even though before it wasn't doing that. So there's obviously something coming up underneath the stains that are making them now come off. And then of course I did go through periods where I experimented. I was never on 80-10-10, but I was using high amounts of dates, trying a little bit more bananas and other fruits, but again, that always just ran into problems with, and they were ripe, don't go on about you weren't doing it right, etc. They were causing really acute sharp pains in certain parts of my teeth, and that's just not the thing that would have worked for me. And just because I didn't go completely low fat does not mean that I did it improper, and that I would have been fine had I eliminated everything else but fruit and vegetables, and I wouldn't have had these pains. That makes no logical sense whatsoever. If you have tooth problems, dropping fat from your diet isn't going to switch that. There's no biological process that I can understand or clearly think about that would make that a reality. But when you, personally, when I cut out the sugars, tooth pain disappears, and I know that my teeth aren't slowly crumbling from the inside out. Finally, there was some perception in the comments, and perhaps a little bit from you, with sort of the posing as if to show off that you're getting these results and that I don't get results. I don't know if you've ever watched videos on my channel, or the people commenting haven't been watching videos. I mean, I put on a lot of weight on a plant-based diet. I was vegetarian, so I guess I was consuming dairy, but I put on over 10 pounds in 3 months, and that wasn't just water weight, because in the first few weeks you're putting on water. I technically gained 5 pounds in the first week of working out, but that can definitely be attributed to water gain, and then you'll see that sort of level out, and you'll put on, if you're doing a good program, you're going to put that on with some ease. And somewhere is a great protein. It's good to see you're using that, because I've seen most 80-10-10 bodybuilding types put on maybe 5 pounds a year, which is a very slow process, and from what I can see, as terms of trying to build muscle. So I wanted to share some pictures of my body progress over the years. Here's a picture of me before I was raw vegan. So I was vegetarian, verging on vegan here. And then when I went raw vegan to start with, I had gone low sugar, and this was a picture I took after being 2 months of literally not one drop of fruit sugar or anything else that would have converted to fat very readily. So you saw that my abs got very cut, and I was doing specific ab exercises to get that way, and because I didn't keep that up, that kind of disappeared because I was really focused on abdominal work in that period. And if I ever want to get to that point again, I can do that because I have the knowledge and know-how of how to get there. And then this next one is when I began doing this program, and this was after I put on about 10 pounds, so this was before. When you saw that ab shot, it was very close up, so you can't really see from afar, but I don't have a lot of mass in that picture. I still don't have a ton of mass. I'm not saying I have mass, but I literally did get bigger doing the bodybuilding program, and so that's what this picture is about here. And then here's a bicep pose, and that last one you saw, that there's a bit of bulk that got added to the pectoral muscles and of course arms and shoulders. And then when I started to eat meat at the end of that program, I cut the program short. I was claiming I was going to do this for a year, and I really only made it 3 months through because I just had such bad health problems from both the lifestyle of bodybuilding just doesn't suit me. I'm more of a body weight guy. And then I just switched over and started doing body weight exercises. and I liked it a lot more. And I was able to keep all that weight on. And then adding meat to my diet, the weight stayed on. I stayed pretty much the same shape. And here's a picture of me from a photo shoot doing a pose. There's two poses there. One's in front of on a chair, and the next one's in front of a tree. So you can see that's about 4 months into eating meat, and you know, I'm not suddenly putting on a huge gut. I'm not suddenly having all my muscle mass melt away. Still stayed very lean and very strong, and I continue to only make strength gains. And I'll be doing more strength videos in the near future once I've gone through some of the information I'm looking to share with you guys over the next couple weeks. Now, to use some personal life examples of what I've seen in people and reversing disease, getting better health by adding animal foods in, is probably the best example, which was inspirational to me and was a challenge to me when I was actually vegan, because this happened about 6 years ago now. My aunt, and she got breast cancer a number of years ago, and she was a very active person. She had been vegetarian for almost 20 years, on and off at certain points. She was vegan at one point. She was near fruitarian when living in India for a number of years. She tried a lot of different very plant-based diets, very against eating meat for spiritual reasons mostly, and she ran into these health problems and decided to work with a practitioner that got her eating meat. She was doing some supplements and other things too, and she actually recovered from breast cancer and has been clean or free of the breast cancer ever since. She's very healthy. She's gone back to her athletics. She started playing tennis again, which she was very competitive and as a child growing up, as a teenager. And the summer before this past summer, she was competing in Canada's national women's doubles tournament. She had been free of cancer for 4 years at this point, or recovered from it, or at first had it and then started the process of recovering from it 4 years ago. And at this point she had been so athletically capable from the addition of meat, eggs, dairy in certain amounts, and eating a more paleo-type diet that she actually went on to win in her age category as Canada's national tennis champion in the women's doubles over 40. So she's very athletic, very capable, and is very healthy now. So this, to me, if it was so cut and dry that consuming meat causes cancer, not consuming meat is the way to prevent and reverse cancer, you wouldn't hear these things and they wouldn't be possible. If it was that cut and dry, it would be impossible to find a single testimonial of that. So because there's a testimonial that I'm presenting right here, it just means that that theory has to come into question. It's either that theory is wrong or it doesn't apply to everyone. And I'm the first one to say, you know, no diet is perfect for everyone. I always recommend people, if they're doing well on a vegan diet, to just continue it. I might make suggestions if someone's having problems with it, and that's what generally people come to me for, is when they have their problems. And that could be health problems, or it could be mental problems, and it can deal with diet, or it can deal with other lifestyle issues. In my 5 years of seeing people for various types of health consultations, I've been doing it for longer than I have had YouTube videos for in the last 2 years. I've consulted with people on many forms of cancer, cardiovascular disease, schizophrenia, weight loss, thyroid problems, hormone issues / fertility, and even I've worked with cardiologists and professional people in the medical field who want better health advice than they can find in the medical field. So while I only have training in herbalism and diet, and I'm a certified biofeedback specialist that deals with stress and pain management, and I only have several hundred hours of course work and close to 100 case studies completed, and I don't have any university letters after my name, only these holistic course type ones. I'd love to get some university course letters after my name if I feel it's necessary. At this point I don't feel it's totally necessary, but as my audience grows larger that might be necessary. But I must ask you, Brandon, what are your qualifications? Who are you working with? Are you charging them, or are these just sort of friendly advice you're giving some friends on YouTube or your family. And when you began uploading health videos 4 months ago, were you doing this before that? Were you always interested in health? Like, have you had like 10 years of experience doing in-depth research in the health field like I have? Not trying to say that from an egotistical standpoint, I'm just giving you my side of things of what I've been doing. You might not have been aware of that, and you might have thought it was just some face on YouTube making all this stuff up because I just read it. That's the first thing I came across in a book. You kind of made it sound as if you didn't even know I was ever vegetarian or vegan. Again, just glanced through my videos over the years. I was on a certain path that ran into problems, and I corrected it, and I got better and healthier as a result. So you really have to ask the question, why would I get such people with very serious health issues coming to me? Personally, I think it's because I actually back my videos up, and they're well referenced, and I come from a very logical place. People can see that. Obviously, there's going to be some people that disagree with me, and that's fine. They'll have some very vehement things to say, and that's fine. But you can't blame the science and say everything is pseudoscience, because I'm saying your basis is pseudoscience. The claim of the meat and dairy industry being lobbying and having their hand in everything is a little paranoid. There's also the wheat, soy, corn, even produce industry that is pushing for their studies to be recognized, and 3 of those are bigger than the meat and dairy industry combined, each on their own. So, who has the bigger say in things? Is it the meat and dairy industry, or is it soy? Is it the GMO industry? Is it the wheat industry, etc.? We'll get back to the main topic of this video in just one moment. If you're enjoying this content, perhaps you're a regular subscriber, perhaps you've found me in a YouTube search relating to the information I put out, I'd ask you to consider making some sort of financial contribution if you want to see me continually put out this well-researched, in-depth videos. Ways of doing that are in the drop-down menu below this video. You have to come to the actual YouTube video page if you're on a third-party site, and you can find links to different things I'd recommend you do. One of which could be purchasing through an affiliate of mine, companies I recommend that have great products, high-quality companies that I personally purchase from. Another way is to make a direct donation to me through PayPal. Another way, of course, is also to set up phone consultations, and you can find that at my main site, at the link below. So with that, I can definitely appreciate anything you're able to contribute to me, even if it's just your open heart and kind words. So with that, we'll get right back to the content, and thank you. If you want more experiential stuff, as sort of weak as it is in terms of a scientific basis, you can look into the work of William Walcott, who's the author of the Metabolic Typing Diet, and he has a ton of case studies in there of people improving their health. Some were on a high-meat diet and they did better on a near-vegetarian or a completely vegetarian diet. That's fine. Some were vegetarian or vegan and had such bad health problems, but when they added the meat in, they got better. He fully acknowledges that that happens in people and that there is this variety of different people having different needs. And that's something I've talked about for a long time and do recognize. But he does talk about the majority of people needing some form of animal foods, and that's also what I tend to recommend people look into. And interestingly, the wife of one of his mentors had this story from her own health challenge. She was on her deathbed, and as a vegetarian, this was a number of years ago, it was too early in her life, and he decided to help her through her craving of this bone broth on her deathbed. They were both vegetarian and were against the idea of consuming animal foods and thought, if vegetarianism isn't working, then she's just going to die. But the beef broth was given to her, and she felt a little better. She had it again the next day, and she felt even better still. She didn't die. Every day she kept having beef broth and eventually beef soup and more meat, and she actually recovered, and that's when the mentor of William Walcott, can't remember his name off the top of my head because I don't have my book here, it's in storage. Another great example is Aaron Bilgin, a former 80-10 tenor who ran into health problems and was completely ostracized from the community on 30 Bad when he started to add a bit of meat into his diet and reported improved health. So the first link below in the drop-down menu, you can go down there to look at all these references I'm going to get into now, since I've dealt with the personal experience. And it is an interview about his problems he ran into and then how he's recovered. He's still eating a lot of fruit, but he does have meat in there on a fairly regular basis. And I think it's a shame that he was rejected by this community just because of the fact that he was doing that one thing and it improved his health. To me, that's fascism, that's dogma, that's the pinnacle of not thinking clearly and being based in a dogmatic belief and not true health. If someone is running into health problems and they're doing everything to a T, and of course people are going to say things about that like he was under eating but he wasn't, well then, tough break, you're stuck in a paradigm of dogma. Another link below the second one is Vilhjalmur Stephenson, and he's an example of a guy who went on an all-meat diet for many years. This is a study actually of 2 people, but it refers to his experiences living in the Arctic, eating meat for 9 of 11 years of living up there. He only ate fish and meat in that period. And I guess the 2 years would have been the collective summertime when the roots and berries would have been available. Still a very high meat diet. So, yeah, then this article or this study gets into the experiment of these 2 people going a full year on just animal food. And it's pretty interesting how great their health gets and how they don't really have any problems whatsoever. Except for when they went too low fat, they did run into constipation, interestingly. So you've got to keep the fat up there. I want to get into your own personal health experiences a little bit, Brandon. Just sort of look at your logic behind some of your statements you're making. I think it's great that you're doing this workout program on a complete plant-based diet. You want to prove to yourself and other people that it's possible, and I was doing the same thing. I was vegetarian as opposed to vegan. I interviewed a friend who did it on a vegan diet. It's one of the most popular videos on YouTube. If you search raw food bodybuilding, you'll find that one. Interview with Mark Handy. You're kind of insinuating that when you eat meat you lose muscle mass, even though, as we see in most people who do bodybuilding, they're eating a lot of meat. And not saying it's the right way to eat meat, but they are putting on the muscle mass, so yeah, we can't say that just because you're doing it on a plant-based diet means you can get better results on a plant-based diet, because we generally don't see people on a plant-based diet doing better than those eating meat. They just can do it. Sometimes it happens slower, sometimes it can happen at the same rate, and there has been some examples in the natural bodybuilding industry of plant-based diet athletes winning those competitions, and that's great. Next, you were talking about your high blood pressure, high cholesterol, kidney and liver problems that was happening in your lifestyle, and I just was wondering at what point was this happening? That you talk on your profile about, on your YouTube profile specifically, about some stressful times in your past. So was this happening then? Because stress is very implicit in changing bodily functions. Also, if you're in those stressful scenarios and you're eating really bad food, I think you know what I'm talking about. That's going to affect your health too, even for the long run. And getting on a cleansing diet in the sense of high fiber diet, not to say that fat can't be cleansing, but if that's one way that you cleanse, then that can be beneficial, but it doesn't mean that organic grass-fed pasture-raised meat is going to do the same. So was the meat the one and only thing you changed as a result of this lifestyle change? Because I'm just going to quote you here. You made a declaration to myself and my family to self-improvement in all aspects of, and saturate myself to information about the mind, body, spirit, and also entrepreneurship. So you sounds like you took your whole lifestyle and turned it around. That's fantastic. But when you do that, you're not getting an idea of what any one thing improved your health. In reality, all those things will reduce stress, improve health, give you peace of mind, especially having enough financial abundance in your life. So when you turn those things around, you're going to see improvements in your health. So if you did do all those at the same time, it's impossible to say that it was meat. I mean, even if you had dropped meat, eggs, and dairy all at once, you didn't really specify if you did those one after the other over a period of time or not. Even if you did those all at the same time, you wouldn't know which one of those was causing them problems, because you can have allergies to casein, you could have allergies to protein in eggs. Could be one of those things, could be two of those things. Might be all three, but you don't know unless you actually break it down like that. So, again, that's just a problem in the mentality of making huge changes and not looking at the finer details, which is the more controlled scientific self-experimentation, if we're going to talk about the science of looking at yourself. You also talk about doing every diet in the book and trying them all, trying the Hippocrates diet. And I really question that possibility. You might have, but really go into detail about that. Like, were you doing the Hippocrates diet, like growing your own sprouts, juicing, getting a liter of sprout, cucumber, and celery juice every day? That's a lot of work. When I was doing that for a certain period of time, that takes up 1 hour of your day just to juice and clean, another hour several times a week to do the planting, and a big investment on the light rack for the sprouts. I can't say I've done everything to a T in the various diets I've tried, but I have tried a wide range of things as well. And you get a sense going into something whether or not it's good or not. But to say you've done them all is a bit not fully being clear with your audience. You can try a high protein diet, but have you tried the high primal diet, which is higher in fat? You know, that some people have a drastic difference in experience of the paleo diet versus the primal diet. Paleo is like the lean meat, having lots of potatoes and starchy foods in there too, as long as they're not grains, and no limit really on fruit intake. So you can have a very high carb intake, but whereas the primal diet, which is more fat-based and more realistic to our true ancestry, is going to have enough protein, of course, but it's not a super jacked up high protein diet either. And what I can say about 80-10-10, even though I've never done it, I had the experiences with my teeth. I know it doesn't work for me. I've seen it not work for many people, even when they do it to a T, and people ridicule them for saying they were getting 8 hours of sleep a night instead of 9. That's really nitpicky and ridiculous. If your diet needs to be that fine-tuned to work for everyone, it's quite likely a delusion. And the other thing is, I made a video series, which is link number 3 below, or you can click here to watch it, because this is one of my past videos. And this is the fruitarian myth. It's a 2-part series, and you can read about how there hasn't been any long-term examples of fruitarians yet. They all died young, or ended up switching and adding animal foods back in, or drastically increasing the nuts and seeds and greens in their diet, or completely switching over to a more primal diet. At one point, you continually reference this, how do I find my information? Keep talking about reading books. I haven't read books for a while. I'm constantly on the internet looking up studies. You get these from using scholar.google.com and getting some really good references, as opposed to just someone's opinion written in a book. Yes, you can look through a book and someone's got a basis for something, they mention a study, you can go look that up online. But to say science is bullshit and being all dismissive, these kind of tactics are really weak, and I've seen them used a lot, and they're really not coming from a place of logic or reason. It's just showing that you have no basis for your beliefs, and that you can't actually address the facts that are being brought up. And so, like someone that can't deal with anything in their life, they're going to sweep it under the rug and pretend it's not there, and act as if they're bigger than that. Yes, of course, there's going to be studies that show both sides of an equation, and some people brought up studies in the comments on my last response. However, you can actually start to break down studies and look at them, especially when you have the full text. And by the way, you were talking about my studies being very short paragraphs. That was called an abstract. An abstract, if you're not familiar with this, is just the condensed form, because they charge for scientific full-text papers in many cases. It's the way scientists and researchers get extra money. But I'm not about to start spending $30 on PDFs for just one reference. When there's full text available, I link to that. And I don't expect my people watching my videos to have to pay the $30 for every reference I post if they happen to be that type of reference. So you can get a lot from the abstract, but yes, you're right, sometimes you do need the full text. And about the studies I did use that were short-term, that's fine. I wasn't saying it was the be-all, end-all of studies. I was giving one reference for my hypothesis, so it was a reference that backed up my stance. Again, you didn't provide any references for your stance. You kind of said there's studies out there that support this, but you didn't, again, reference them. You did gloss over the fact that there was an 11-year study in that group of 3 studies that was in the New York Times article. If you want to go back and read through that properly and look at that, you can. That one was many thousands of women too. And that was related to the kidney issues that didn't come up with the higher protein intake. And so 11 years, 3 or 4 or 5,000 women, and no kidney problems was the average. So you're talking about the short bodybuilder one, and how they didn't specify the type of carbs that were being replaced by the red meat, or whatever protein they were switching it over to. And that's a good point, but either way, the prevalent idea is that meat is uber or super inflammatory, and that was kind of your stance, is meat and dairy and eggs are the most inflammatory thing you can eat, so don't eat them to reduce inflammation. But if meat was even slightly inflammatory and these things they were replacing them with were inflammatory, then we're kind of getting a neutral effect. and still doesn't support the hypothesis of meat and dairy being the worst. So it might be slightly inflammatory, but in reality we know from the vast majority of research out there that it's not. And so link number 4 is a YouTube video, and you can watch this one here. It's Rob Wolf talking about inflammation a little bit and how it's very prevalent. You can always get his book or Dr. Lauren Cordain's book for all the references to the studies on paleo diet and higher protein diets, low carb diets, reducing inflammation. And he talks about anti-aging doctors getting on board with this, which is what is happening. You just have to start doing some research or just Google paleo diet inflammation and you'll start getting the results of how many people are getting results with that. Link number 5 below. This isn't a YouTube video, but this is a good one. It's a full text study, and it's comparing low carb dieters versus low fat dieters. And again, we see the low carb dieters having better parameters for everything, inflammation reduced, and you can note the section that talks about insulin resistance being improved, and that is an indication of lowered inflammation. So low carb equals lowered inflammation. Just adding meat to the diet if you have tons of carbohydrates the combination in theory could be more inflammatory than if you had one high and one low, or the other one high and one low. And you also, at one point you talked about the wording of studies being uncertain, we believe, in terms of the scientists saying, being inconclusive. And you have to understand, if you start looking at studies, that's how they're all worded. Scientists are very unbiased. They are trained to not put their bias in, so they don't reach conclusions. Even they might be right in their conclusion, and it's always got to be open-ended because science is always ongoing. That's the whole idea. Everything is a theory and backing up a theory. Some studies have a lot of weight to them in proving a theory. And technically a theory is never 100% proven because something can later come down the road that changes it around. So he also made the point that there's tons of vegan diet teachers reversing diseases. Where are the ones adding animal foods in? Well, if you don't look for them, you're not going to see them. So just because you're looking at the vegan world and saying, you know, I only see vegans, doctors, etc. improving diseases. But if you never look at the other world of nutrition, then you're not going to see it, obviously. So Dr. Mercola, as many 80-10-10ers hate him with a vehemence because he sells some things on his website that help people. He's reversing diseases in his clinic. Metabolic typing author William Walcott, that his program and his work has helped people reverse diseases. As many people even hate this guy too, is Augenis Vonderplanitz. One of the first raw foodists I ever met was a primal raw foodist, and this was before I was even vegetarian. I was working on a farm one summer in early high school, and it was just volunteer work, and there was this guy who came to the farm and had this cow that he asked them to milk but not feed the cow grain. And I thought this was strange. I was just there doing the thing I was doing. I had no idea about raw milk or grass-fed milk. But he had reversed pancreatic cancer with Augenis Vonderplanitz's program. You know, maybe he was completely outright lying, but again, this is experiential studies or science we're talking about. It's not as good as I would like it to be, but it's what you're wanting to hear about. So this was another thing from my past. A guy reverses pancreatic cancer with an all-meat, eggs, dairy diet, a little bit of honey, very few vegetables. Then of course there's Dr. Michael Eads, MD. He's a paleo high-protein diet promoter and has a practice where he's reversing diseases. And then to find some other paleo diet MDs, go to link number 6 below, paleophysiciansnetwork.com, and you can find hundreds of paleo diet doctors that are using that to work with people. At one point you talked about alkalinity and calcium being leaked from the body, and I kind of thought this was silly when I already made a video about this. You can always go back and watch that video. I'm not going to put a link to it because it's the 2 videos back, and I linked to it in my last one. I don't know if you've seen it yet. But yeah, that one goes into the detail and kind of debunks those myths. Again, if you want to refute that, give me some evidence here of meat and dairy causing this acid-alkaline balance problem, when simply breathing deacidifies our body, or hyperventilating or breathing faster is a way of eliminating excess acids of the body. So bigger buffers exist other than just diet. If you tried to control it all through diet, it would be too temperamental. The body's much more able to do it through breathing and metabolism. Talked about your cholesterol being high. Again, this kind of shows a lack of understanding of cholesterol. There's a lot of different cholesterol parameters. Overall cholesterol doesn't say anything at all. You can have very high HDL, very low LDL, and your overall cholesterol could be high, and some doctor would want to put you on statins when high HDL is very much connected with a completely reduced risk of having heart disease. So even then, when you look at LDL, you need to break it down to VLDL and true LDL. And modern, or the mainstream, ways that they measure LDL lumps those two together because it's not sophisticated enough. You have to pay extra to get VLDL tested, and it's pretty pricey as far as I know. There's even IDL, which is intermediary density lipoprotein. And these are actually all proteins. These aren't cholesterol. These are ways that cholesterol and other things are carried throughout the body. And when we consume animal foods, it doesn't actually feed and increase VLDL. That's what triglycerides do, and triglycerides are elevated by carbohydrate consumption. So getting LDL at a normal level, it doesn't need to be super low. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit high. That's controlled by animal food consumption. Getting high HDL is great from animal food consumption and monounsaturated fat consumption, olive oil, the monounsaturated fat that's in virtually all animal foods. And link number 7 below is a study on the paleo diet where all lipid parameters are improved by following this diet. This is a full text study, so please do look at it because you're wanting to see that. And you can see how everything was improved that would normally be connected with heart disease. So I've dealt with the cholesterol issue in the past. I kind of just briefly went into it there. Again, watch video, this is link number 8 below, or you can watch this video here. And I've linked to this already. It sounds like you haven't watched it yet because otherwise you know this or you would have mentioned it. Cholesterol is not an issue. Look at the first 14 references in that video. I start talking about cholesterol at the start of that video, so that's easy to get to. You don't need to skip around. At one point we were talking about fruit and the body running off glucose, and ketosis is a harmful thing. First of all, if your education on ketosis is just from Duran Rider's dumb videos about people falling over at the finish line, you have no idea what ketosis is. He kind of throws around this idea of ketoacidosis occurring in people who go into ketosis, and that's something that only happens to type 1 diabetics, and it's a very acute thing. Just search ketoacidosis on Wikipedia to get an idea of what that is, and stop spreading this information. To learn about ketosis, that same video that's still hovering here, go to 40 minutes and 38 seconds in, and you can learn all about that for the rest of that sort of last third of the video or last quarter. And again, follow those references below that video and you'll learn how ketosis is perfectly healthy. It improves brain functioning. It is great for losing weight, and there's a lot of myths around it. Those people falling over at the end are burning muscle for fuel. They're not burning fat. They might start shifting into fat burning mode, hitting the wall or bonking out. There is an adaptation period when your body goes into ketosis, but it's something we adapted to, and it's a proof of our evolution on a higher fat diet. Primates don't have ketosis, at least most of them. Chimpanzees don't. If they go too long without glucose, they don't shift into ketosis. So ketosis in humans shows that we actually adapted this, which allowed for our brain to grow, because if we ever went through a period of starvation, our brain would have basically ate itself just to keep itself going. And we wouldn't have evolved such a huge brain because we were able to eat, put on a little bit of fat. When the food was low, we could switch over to burning our body fat for fuel and keep our brain going, running on ketones. So the brain does run on ketones. And even looking up the word fatty acid on Wikipedia, if you scan down, you're going to see quotes from medical textbooks that say the heart and skeletal muscles' preferred fuel is fatty acids. So it's not glucose, it's fatty acids. And yes, it's perfectly legitimate for some people to be burning carbs for fuels. It's clear that some people who've gone on a ketogenic diet and run into health problems, it doesn't work for them. But it does work for some people, and it's not the danger that some people promote it to be. And you seem to have shown a bit of a lack of understanding of how fats work and what fats are beneficial or not. So I'm going to say check out link number 9 below, or watch this video here, which is on monounsaturated fat, saturated fat, and polyunsaturated fat, and the differences between them and which ones are healthy, which ones are not. You brought up this idea of comparing people who would do a 4-day vegetable juice fast or smoothie fast and people not doing meat fasts. Well, people do them. Like, look at that guy from earlier who did the 1-year experiment with his friend on all meat. Lots of people are doing it in the paleo community when they first go on paleo. People do it when they're going on trips up to the Arctic. He brought up this idea of comparing people who would do a 4-day vegetable juice fast or smoothie fast and people not doing meat fasts. Well, people do them. Like, look at that guy from earlier who did the 1-year experiment with his friend on all meat. Lots of people are doing it in the paleo community when they first go on paleo. People do it when they're going on trips up to the Arctic. And this would have a different effect. Fat's actually a lot more detoxifying than anything else in the body in terms of proteins or carbs, because we store toxins in our fat. Toxins naturally get drawn to fat, so if you eat a lot of fat, it's going to pull those toxins out and come out your body in undigested form, and then come on up through your body. You then went into saying something about the GI tract, teeth, brain all being evidence that we are plant food eaters. And with the brain, I didn't quite get that. You were saying it only runs off glucose. Again, do some research on this. Don't just say things because you've heard them said by someone else. Actually look into that. Ours is one of the longest of any species in the world. That's talking about a GI tract. We do not have one of the longest digestive tracts in the world. Ours is clearly in between an herbivore, which is extremely long, and a carnivore, which is very short. We have a large intestine that has shrunk in size by a large factor since we came out of the trees and became walking upright Homo erectus and then Homo sapiens. If you compare the overall volume of the large intestine to the small intestine in humans, we have about twice as much volume of our small intestines in comparison to large, whereas in chimpanzees it's the opposite, in gorillas it's the opposite as well, but even larger difference. And we just don't have that huge large intestine anymore because we aren't designed to have as much fiber. Some fiber is great. I'm not saying don't eat fiber, but we have a lot of adaptations eating meat, which I've gone over in past videos. Again, I can keep posting videos, but it's on my channel. You just have to look into it. That series that I've done on animal food, so going to any of those videos I posted earlier, and then going to the other videos in that series, you'll get to that information. MS and getting off animal foods. If you've met people that have done that, that's great. There's a lot of people also doing it on paleo. Link number 10 below, you can go to look at the references of that whole article, and it shows plenty of examples of people that are doing that, reversing symptoms from getting rid of sort of the allergens, the casein in some cases, sometimes it's the lectins and things that are found in grains and beans. Your next point was really bad, the parasites roadkill thing, talking about why do things on the side of the road rot, otherwise must be the parasites and worms, otherwise we'd be overrun by dead corpses. So, first of all, a little lesson in how things break down. Parasites don't break things down. When an animal has parasites dies, the parasites die too, or they crawl out and somehow get somewhere else. They might consume the organism a bit, but as it's dying, but it's largely bacterial decomposition that takes place. The same bacterial decomposition that takes place on any plant matter when it's picked and left on the ground or cut. You know, any plant matter rots as well. It's not just animals that rot. Ever seen a compost pile? So just because there's maggots in an animal on the side of the road doesn't mean there's maggots in the animal while it's living. Yes, people can. I dealt with the parasite issue in the past video. You can go there and see what I had to say there too. So hydrochloric acid prevents in our stomach prevents food from rotting inside you because it's killing the bacteria. Meat gets digested; it doesn't start rotting inside you. Actually, plant foods do start rotting inside you. They start to ferment, and because they oxidize a lot quicker than meat does. So link number 11 below, you can look at. It's an article, a blog post, comparing meat to vegetables, and does meat rot in your colon? It's actually the beans, grains, and vegetables that do, and that's why you get gassy after beans. Personally, I had a massively reduced amount of flatulence when I got off the high plant-based diet. One of the better things that I experienced, probably the best thing I experienced from that switch. Okay, no, having my energy back was the best thing. Having my teeth repair themselves was the best thing, but lowered flatulence, I thought I was on the only one with problems because people were saying they had such healthy digestion. And then, yes, if you're eating processed food and switch to raw food, you can have improved digestion. But even then, you're going to still have flatulence because this stuff isn't meant to be digested in the human body, at least when it comes to sprouted beans and stuff like that. So last thing I'm going to talk about here is you're talking about humans survived off meat. They didn't thrive on it. And all I have to say is for 2.6 million years we've been eating meat in a large quantity. Cover that in link number 12, which is this video here. You can watch if you want to find out about that. It's my video on the ancestral diet of humans. Please refute that. Refute the points in that. Make a video response to that, anyone. Because, you know, I've put up a standard here and people aren't meeting that standard. They might say a few comments here and there, but they don't actually get into the details. If you're a denier of evolution, well, I can't help you there. You need some help understanding basic logic. I'm not claiming that evolution happened exactly the way the mainstream says it did. It might have, but to say that 2.6 million years ago humans weren't even here, and those aren't our ancestors, which I had someone saying yesterday or earlier today, basically, that is very much delusion. So again, also look at links number 13 and 14 below if you want to learn about how cooked food is actually more absorbable, some of the nutrients in it, and that led to humanity's evolution to having a bigger brain, bigger body, better health. Not saying you can't have raw food in your diet, but it's both the cooked food and the animal foods that were recognized in the book, Catching Fire, How Cooking Made Us Human, as being the cause for the development of humanity. So with that, definitely leave your comments below. I'm not going to read your comments if you're leaving epic 20 post remarks. Make a video response if you need to do that. And with that, take care and embrace life without limits. Thank you for watching.